Hey everyone, I'm really hoping the internet is going to play ball today because it has been very erratic. So we'll see. Just gonna wait for somebody to join live, and in the meantime, just get everything set up. Please do let me know if things are freezing or can't hear me or whatever it is. All right. So I'd love to know while we wait what your experience is with feeling like an imposter or experiencing imposter syndrome. It's also sometimes referred to as fraud phenomenon or imposter phenomenon or syndrome. So let me know what, have you experienced this? Is this something that you deal with often, or is it something that you can't really relate to, or every now and then? I'd love to know your thoughts and experiences on this. And it's also helpful to see kind of other people share their experiences and see other people also struggling with this phenomenon. Am I hoping the internet is there? Okay. So I'll just wait 1 or 2 more minutes. Let me know your experience with imposter phenomenon, with syndrome. Is this something you experience it quite often? Are there certain like contexts that maybe you feel more like an imposter in and others not so much? Like sometimes you feel really confident and you've got this, and then other times feeling like someone's gonna find out that you're not supposed to do. Yeah, hope you guys can hear me. Let me know if there's any issues with the sound or the connection. So while we're waiting, I'm Sarah, health and career coach for women in healthcare. And this is something that comes up a lot in my conversations with clients. And as we'll see as we're going through this, Jane says sound is not great. Is it like fuzzy, or is it freezing, or what exactly is going on? See if I can. Maybe I'll just be closer to the computer. Is that better? Okay, cool. So yeah, imposter phenomenon is something that comes up a lot in healthcare providers, particularly in women healthcare providers, and particularly in the kind of beginning stages of one's career. But it's not exclusive to those things. Anyone can experience it. Okay. But yeah, so certain contexts, certain people are more predisposed to it, but it can happen with anyone. And it is also more likely in places where there's less representation. So for example, if you are the first Black female in a particular area, a particular career or role, you are more likely to feel that than someone who, everyone looks like you, everyone who has come before you is sort of similar to you. So there are different situations, and yeah, for example, gender, women are more likely to experience it. But 70% of people report feeling this at some point in their life. And then it gets higher in certain areas and certain people. So the first thing that I just want to make clear is that sometimes when people talk about imposter syndrome, the word syndrome can often make it sound as if it's some kind of like disorder. or illness or something like that. And that's not the case. In fact, they suggest that we rather use the term imposter phenomenon because of that. But imposter syndrome is kind of like the term that most people will use. But just so you're clear, it's not a diagnosable medical illness, but they describe it as a behavioral health phenomenon. And it's described as a self-doubt of your intellect, your skills, or accomplishments. And this is the interesting part. It's actually defined as the self-doubt in those areas among high-achieving individuals. So it's literally defined as something that appears in high-achieving individuals. Which, like, obviously then the joke's kind of like, are you even good enough to have imposter syndrome? But I just find that so interesting, is that it literally is something that appears in people who have high levels of achievement, intellect, accomplishments, right? And those are the very people who are struggling with that self-doubt. And we can sort of see why this might be the case. And, you know, working in healthcare, you know this, like as you learn more things, as you gain more skills, as you get exposed to experts in certain fields, the more you realize how much there is to know and how little you know in relation, right? So it often is kind of this weird, seemingly paradoxical thing where the more I learn and the more I know, the more I can see how much there is to know, and I might doubt myself actually more than someone who doesn't know as much as I do or hasn't accomplished what I have. So just being aware of that it is a phenomenon in high achieving individuals. So it literally can't be something that means that you are not a high achiever, right? Just by definition. And the other thing that I really love to sort of show people is how that I have a few quotes here that I'm just going to read from like people who have achieved incredible things in different areas, right? And that they are still experiencing imposter syndrome. And I don't want this to discourage you and be like, oh, well, it's hopeless. I'm always going to sound, I mean, I'm sorry, really, I'm always going to feel like an imposter. You know, I'm never going to feel confident, all this kind of stuff. It's more the opposite, to make you realize that it literally cannot be a true reflection of the objective success and accomplishments and knowledge that you have. Imposter phenomenon or syndrome and the reality of your achievements, your intellect, your abilities, they are two separate things. So Maya Angelou, the civil rights activist, she's an author and a poet and a Nobel laureate. She says, I have written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everyone, and they're going to find me out. Here's an example of what I was speaking about just now is Sonia Stomper. She's the first Hispanic Supreme Court Justice, and she says, I have spent my years since Princeton, while at law school and in my various professional jobs, not feeling completely a part of the world I inhabit. I'm always looking over my shoulder, wondering if I measure up. Jane says, I'm a betrayal, breakup, separation, divorce consultant. I have a tendency to doubt, limit, hold back content based on views, opinion, but I also believe in being authentic. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know how much experience and expertise you have, but you still have this tendency to limit, hold back, and doubt yourself. And we'll talk about some of the things that come out of feeling like an imposter. But that's a really good example of that. And this I found quite funny. So Jodie Foster, the actress, says, it was the same way when I walked onto the campus at Yale. I thought everyone would find out and they'd take the Oscar back. They'd come to my house, knocking on my door and saying, excuse me, we meant to give that to someone else. That was going to Meryl Streep. So she's having this like imposter thing of like, you know, they made a mistake. There's actually supposed to be Meryl Streep. And then I found a quote by Meryl Streep saying, I think, why would anyone want to see me again in a movie? And I don't know how to act anyway, so why am I doing this? So these are like incredibly, what do you call it? They've achieved a lot. And they have so many awards, and they've been in so many movies, and they still have these feelings of like, someone's going to find out that I actually have no idea how to act. And then Dr. Margaret Chan of the World Health Organization said, there are an awful lot of people out there who think I'm an expert. How do these people believe all of this about me? I'm so much aware of all the things I don't know. So again, these quotes are just to show you that even people who have this objective success still feel this way. So we can't see it as, if I just actually achieve success and actually I'm good at what I do and actually know everything, then I won't feel like an imposter, right? That's not going to be the solution to not feeling like an imposter. Okay, so most of us have like an intuitive sense of like what it means to feel like an imposter and experiencing imposter phenomenon. But here are some questions by the Imposter Syndrome Institute to identify this. And I'm also going to put a link to, or a file in the comments where you can actually go and like rate your imposter syndrome and like what the severity is. And you can also, I also find it helpful to just use the questions as like, it helps you identify like what are the different ways that this might show up in my life. Okay, but these are kind of a few just simple questions. So 1, do you secretly worry that you're not as bright, capable, or qualified as everyone thinks that you are? Do you chalk up your accomplishments to luck, timing, connections, or computer error? Do you believe that if I can do it, then anybody can? Do you agonize over the smallest little flaws in your work? Are you crushed by even constructive criticism and you see it as evidence of your ineptness? When you do succeed, do you secretly feel like you fooled them again? And do you worry that it's just a matter of time before you're found out? So these are some of the questions to identify whether you struggle with it. And then, like I said, you can go a little bit more in detail with that other assessment. But thinking about for a second, like if you feel like I don't belong here, I'm not as smart as everyone thinks I am, all my accomplishments and my accolades and whatever it is, these are all just luck or timing, or I knew the right person, or whatever it is. And all these, like, you know, the things like if I'm criticized or there's smallest flaws in my work, there's something wrong with me, I'm inept. Think about the collection of those kinds of things and think about this. Like, how likely, if you're experiencing that, how likely are you to share your ideas with the world? Kind of like Jane's point, right? She holds back on putting her content out there. How likely are you to step up for a role that is more challenging, or put yourself out there for an opportunity that you're not even sure that you can do? How likely are you to admit that you don't know something, or ask questions about things that you think maybe you should have already known, or get feedback and criticism, or being willing to look stupid when you, for example, ask a question, right? Or check something with someone. How likely are you to almost compensate for this feeling of like, I'm not good enough, I don't belong? How likely are you to compensate by overworking, over preparing for everything? I can identify with this one a lot. And I also, like, I really struggle with admitting that I don't know something. We'll go through the different types now and you'll see like which one you identify with. But yeah, a lot of these things I definitely do identify with. And then think about, like, if you are experiencing all those feelings of being an imposter and self-doubt, how likely are you to be stressed and anxious and exhausted, right? So if you think about it, it's like this ironic thing, because we are worried that we're not good enough, and we're worried that we are not smart enough, and we're worried that we're going to be found out. And the things that happen when we come from that place, like not stepping up for opportunities, not sharing our ideas, not getting feedback and asking questions, getting criticism, completely being overworked and overprepared so that we're stressed and anxious, those things are literally going to go against what you're trying to achieve, right? The very thing you're worried about is like, oh, I don't know enough and I'm, not competent and I'm all these things. But you think that that is helping you get better and helping you build skills and helping you be excellent, right? But it's actually not. It's actually leading to the opposite. It's leading to being less satisfied, less accomplished. You have a high risk of burnout. You have a high risk of mental health problems. So just realizing that, because I think a lot of us kind of use it as like we almost see it as a good thing. Like if I don't feel like an imposter, I'm not going to be driven to actually get better and actually achieve and actually be excellent. But just realizing that it needs to come from a different place. It needs to come from a genuine intrinsic joy and curiosity in what you do and genuine want to get better at that thing, not because you feel you're inept and you're trying to compensate for that, but because that genuinely is something that you want and genuinely brings you joy and you're curious about it and you love learning. So just looking for where it comes from. Sometimes the exact same behaviors can be incredibly healthy and the exact same behaviors can be incredibly unhealthy, depending on what the sort of source of that energy is or what it's coming from internally. I'd love to know if you have any examples of something you've done, something you do in response to feeling like an imposter. I think for me, it has been like admitting that I don't know something and like asking questions when they might be dumb questions has been something that I've really struggled to do. And you can see, you can follow that along, right? If I don't admit to not knowing and I don't ask questions, then I'm not going to learn. I'm not going to gain that knowledge from that person in that moment, right? Whereas if I'm comfortable and confident enough to say, actually, I don't know that, or I learned that in school, but it's not something that I use every day, or whatever it is. There are different ways to say, I don't know, without just saying, I don't know. But in a way that actually is driven by curiosity and wanting to learn and not a protective space of like, I need to make sure that no one thinks that I'm dumb or don't know things or, have a terrible memory. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go through the different types of imposter phenomenon. And these are kind of archetypes, right? And whenever we have archetypes, it's kind of a simplification of things. And most of the time, will be kind of a combination of one or two, sometimes three. Sometimes we have a little bit of all of them, but you might identify certain ones that are more, that are stronger. Okay, so there's the perfectionist. I should get my marketing coach, Lauren Smith, on here to talk about this stuff, because she's an expert in imposter syndrome. But yeah, so these are the types of imposter syndrome. So the perfectionist is someone who focuses on like how something turns out. Like they want it to be perfect. They want it to be, in some sense, flawless. And even the tiniest little mistakes or flaws, they feel a lot of failure, and that brings on this feeling of shame. So each of these kind of have their own source of like, what does failure mean? What brings you shame? So the perfectionist, it's like when you make mistakes, even if they're small, to you, they're usually big, but objectively, they are minor flaws. And then there's the expert. So the expert focuses on how much they know. So they expect that they should know everything. So even when there's a small gap in their knowledge, or someone notices something like, you didn't know this, or like makes a joke that you didn't know that the answer to something, that can bring this feeling of failure and shame. after a game of 30 seconds where there was like this really obvious thing. I think it was like Barack Obama's first name, so Barack. And I could not think of this name. And I felt so like ashamed about not knowing this, even though it's like in that moment, just, your brain just, but I just refused to play 30 seconds after that. So it's like, yeah. So as you might be able to tell, this one is the one that I identify with the most. Like, I really feel a lot of shame if there's something that I don't know, especially if people sort of think that I should have known that. And often people will do that, like there will be an area that they are really passionate about knowing about. And then if you don't know stuff in that area, they will shame you for that. So just remembering also that other people are going to have their opinions on what you should and shouldn't know and how well you should be able to do things and how whether you should ask questions and whether you should admit to not knowing. But if you have that confidence, you can sort of back yourself even when someone else thinks, oh, you should know this, right? Okay, so the perfectionist, when there's minor flaws, failure and shame. The experts, when there's a minor lack of knowledge, you have shame and failure. Jane, you can also let me know which one you identify with the most. The soloist is the one who feels like they should be able to do everything on their own. So you shouldn't need help, you should need coaching, you should need mentoring. You should be able to do everything yourself. You should be able to figure it out. And when you can't, when you need help, when you need support, you feel failure. You feel like a failure and you feel shame. The fourth one is the natural genius. So the natural genius focuses on accomplishments and competence, but there's a focus on speed and ease. So I should be able to master something quickly. I should be able to get it quickly. I shouldn't have to work hard at something to get it because that means something about me, right? I should naturally be good at things. So these are people who like, if they're not good at something immediately, they will, do something else. They will feel like a failure if they weren't immediately good at it, and they will feel ashamed. The superhuman is you're basing your competence on like how many different things, your different roles, how many can you juggle, how many different roles can you excel in, and you feel shame if you can't just handle it all perfectly and easily, right? There's ease. I can do all of these roles. There's no problem. James says that 30 seconds being also an issue. Do you know, the solution I found is that when I play, now it has to be like in little teams. So I'm never the only one having to answer. Then it takes the pressure off me and I'm usually like much better at it. But as soon as there's like pressure, and yeah, I'm getting better at the pressure. But yeah, that's a solution in the short term for anyone who wants to know. Okay, cool. So there's perfectionist, the expert, the soloist, the natural genius, and the superhuman. And the very thing that we're trying to protect ourselves against is almost being reinforced by our behaviors around it. And so we want to just start kind of reframing all of that, right? Reframe what failure means, right? It's an opportunity to learn. Reframing what flaws look like is an opportunity for improvement. If there's something I don't know, it's an opportunity for me to be curious and to learn something more. When I suck at something, it's like, yes, here's something that I can get better at and I can explore and I can, build skills in. And, meeting other people or not being able to juggle everything at once, right? That can be a really good thing because when you genuinely want excellence and mastery in something, we really want to be able to focus on that one thing or few things that are really important to us, and then be happy with being good enough at the race. And we actually really need that skill of learning how to be good enough at the race in order to truly be excellent, right? So people have this feeling of like, I can't accept being good enough in something because that's not true excellence. But remember which thing you're trying to be excellent at. It's not everything, right? There's not all roles in all situations all of the time, right? So just like I said, kind of looking at where these behaviors are coming from Are you trying to protect yourself? Are you trying to avoid people thinking a certain thing about you? Are you afraid of the consequences of that? Or are you learning and growing and seeking excellence because that is intrinsically joyful for you and you feel curious about it, you love learning, you love improving, you love that process of getting better at things and truly building skills in things. So looking at where that comes from, and different people will kind of struggle with different aspects of that, and that's why there's kind of the different archetypes. So you can kind of look at your archetype and think about, like, how would you reframe that? If you someone who is, for example, the natural genius, how can you be excited when you suck at something, right? And say, like, this is so cool because this is an area that I can actually grow in and learn in. And thinking about true excellence doesn't mean being great at something from the beginning, right? That's just not how it works. So just kind of keep looking at your assumptions underlying that, and see how you can kind of reframe that for yourself. Awesome. Hi, Elmarie. Let us know if you struggle with imposter phenomenon as well, imposter syndrome. And yeah, you're welcome to let me know in the comments anything that you are particularly struggling with, and we can help you like reframe that, which archetype you most identify with, and we can get you a reframe for that. And then, like I said, I will also post that assessment that you can do to kind of assess your imposter phenomenon. And you kind of raised it on this scale. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining and listening. And yeah, this is something that, like I said, appears in healthcare providers a lot of the time, not exclusively healthcare providers, obviously, but it is something that I work a lot with on my with my clients on this. So know that you're not alone in the struggle. And yeah, let me know if you need any support on that. Have a great Sunday, and I'll chat to you guys soon.